How's it going, guys? Welcome back to Hockey Hub. Today, we're going to focus mostly on the Carolina Hurricanes. So, this week we went 2-1-1, right? Not necessarily a bad record, I would say. But what I think I'm a little concerned about is when we've looked off our game, we've looked pretty god awful. The defense has struggled, to put it frankly. And yeah, I know Slavin's out, and my concern is at this point in time, even if you bring Slavin back, he's not a miracle worker. He's not going to. The great thing about hockey is one player doesn't solve all your team's problems, right? He might match up against the top pairing, the top offensive line on the other teams, but he's not going to cover gaping holes, which is what I think we're seeing a little bit too regularly at this point in time. Another topic we're going to hit a little later in this video, is the Svechnikov essentially saying he didn't want to be a part of, offering up being trading himself if he's only going to be playing on the third and fourth line. And then I want to go over Aho. But first, let's talk about that game last night, right? So the Buffalo Sabres are one of the worst teams in the NHL. And when I checked the schedule Saturday night, I saw a Sunday afternoon game. I was like, dude, this feels like a trap game. This feels like a game that could easily get away from the Hurricanes. So Sunday morning when we all turned on the TV, seeing Jordan Stone not playing, now you're like, oh, God, this is definitely a trap game at this point in time. And the Hurricanes proceeded to spring the trap, right? So no Slavin, no Stahl. First point, no leadership. Right? So that's sort of what that game looked like to me. That game, for everyone who says that Aho should be the next captain, this will probably go as like, if I'm a prosecutor, this is my first thing of evidence. Hey, that's not leadership. That the Buffalo Sabres are a completely beatable team with our lineup. Our top six, there's only maybe 2 or 3 players from Buffalo on the forwards that would enter our top 9, So, and that's Tage Thompson and Alex Touch. Those are the only 2 real players there from the forwards who mean anything to Buffalo, who really would get that engine going for Buffalo, right? So, with that all being said, when you look at a situation like what the Hurricanes find themselves in, Freddie Anderson wasn't making any saves. He wasn't helping us out. He made a couple maybe decent ones, I would say. But what we've been needing from him without having Slavin in the lineup is those showstoppers, right? But we'll get back to that here in a second. But I didn't see leadership when I watched that game. I saw what I can only describe as someone trying to lead, not necessarily leading, And Brendan Moore even quoted on Twitter here. I'll put that right there. That, hey, it looked like we didn't have leadership going. It looked like we could tell from the get-go that things weren't going to go our way. The bounces weren't going to go our way. The effort wasn't where it needed to be. And for the last, 10 years of us watching Brendan Moore's system get put into place, we know immediately when the Hurricanes aren't going to be on it. And one shot, 10 minutes into the game, yeah, we know the Hurricanes hockey. We know the brand of hockey that we should be expecting from them, and that wasn't it. So you see a lack of leadership. You see a lack of effort. You don't see them pushing play, right? You don't see that leadership, that sometimes you need, especially on a Sunday afternoon game, to get them over the hump, to get them going, to rev those engines up, right? So you don't see that. So to me, that already sort of kind of screams like, if Aho's won the captaincy, that wasn't it. That whatever, and mind you, he even tried to pull someone into a rough until get into a little scrum to get the boys going, but he didn't get called for a roughing call. It's like, it's not necessarily a knock on Aho, right, or saying he doesn't know what he's doing. It's more of you have to pick your battles. You have to choose a little bit better and make sure you're going up against the right guy who's going to want to do a couple more extra face washes. So with all that being said, let's go into goaltending, right? Goaltending was atrocious. Frederik Andersen, I'm sorry. I know some of us we've loved him. I'm grateful that even after we drafted him, he decided to go re-enter the draft and get drafted by Anaheim and come back here. I'm glad that he did, right? He's given us some great years. But we're at a point now where it's a crossroads. It's like he's not helping us win. And if Kochenkov can't go, Bussy ain't much of a better option at this point, you know. So I sort of see why Anderson's getting the starts right now. But what happens if Kochenkov comes back and he's not where he needs to be? What do? We don't have a goaltender then. We don't have someone who's going to come that second round of the playoffs where they're throwing everything in their brother at the net, or come the Eastern Conference Finals when everything is getting thrown at the net. They're crashing hard and our defense isn't able to keep up. Then what are we doing? Right? That is my fear right now, is Jordan Staal, bless his soul, I think he's about to be 36 this year. You know, he doesn't have too many more of these runs in him. We only have him under contract for this year and next, right? So you're not wanting to waste that Selke-like defensive thinking, shutdown person that Staal has become for us, our guy, because we don't have a solution to goaltending. When there are goaltenders that are out there on the market, right? You're going to have to give up something for it to take care of the goaltending situation. So now mind you, if Kochenkov comes back and he flies, I think we're good. Honestly, I really don't see too much of an issue. But my fear is that he's not going to be like he's done well so far. I'm not knocking him now, but what happens when we get into March, right, or beginning of April, and he's played 50-ish games, 45-ish games, more than he's ever done before, right? And now we're leaning on him every night in the playoffs, and he can't keep up. That's what my concern is, because he's always sort of kind of shown that like it's sort of like a small little chip or a little crack in a glass, right? And the second the playoff hits, it seems like it always like shatters or like splinters out, right? So my concern with goaltending right now is very real. I think that no Hurricanes fan should feel any level of comfort with it. Anderson has done well for us. He has in the past. We love him to death, but I don't necessarily think, and maybe that's a conversation that the GM should be having with Anderson. Hey, we're just so you know, we're not re-signing you. So we're gonna have that same conversation that they had with Burns and some of these other guys, and say, hey, look, we're not bringing you back. So if you want to like go somewhere and try to earn a living, let us know now so that we can address these issues and figure out where we need to go with it. Because right now, like he's just not it. Plain and simple, right? So after that, right, after you sort of kind of break down those two things, right, from the game last night with Buffalo, you start seeing like a little bit of a pattern is now starting to emerge where like bad, horrible, miserable giveaways that we have historically in the past never given, right? Besides the years we didn't make the playoffs, right? So when you look at this, you have to say, okay, clearly defensive breakdowns are happening. Forwards are leaving the zone too early. Defense isn't rolling the way they need to. And mind you, this is just one game. But what I'm pointing out, what I'm seeing is like it seems like it's becoming more and more of a tendency, like since the departure of like the beginning of the season, right? The further away from the beginning of the season we get, the more these errors are gleaming and obvious, right? And you sort of kind of expect with a bunch of players who are not playing these games together that even if they are younger, that they're not going to be making the same mistake over and over and over again. So, we saw rumors a couple weeks ago that potentially the Hurricanes were going to look for another defenseman. I don't necessarily know if another defenseman is the ticket, but I do think the ticket is solidifying your pairs, right? Like Niskanen and Gostisbehere, I think, should be second pair all day. Right now, first pair should be Miller and Chatfield, right? Nystrom fills in with Riley on that third defensive pairing, and then that is what the six is, And then if we're needing to rotate in and out or change things occasionally, we can, but it's not consistent change. Having 7 defensemen last night, I think, was a horrible idea, right? I've never liked the idea of 7 defensemen on a game, especially when it's a team like Buffalo, right, where you really need to have your offense flying. You don't need your offense changing wing pairs, changing centers, who's playing with who. No, like we should have known from the get-go Buffalo was going to be a pounded-out team, meaning you're going to have to score a good amount of goals. Buffalo just put up 9 against Chicago, right? So we're not going to sit here and pretend that, I'm not saying Chicago's, an amazing team, they're going to make playoffs. But what I am saying is Chicago is a team that, like, they're starting to get it. They're starting to get it together. And Buffalo is an unknown. Right? We know that they've not made the playoffs for the last 15 years. That's one thing. But what we don't know is Lindy Ruff is making changes with these kids and these players. They are getting better. So when you put up 9, that next game, it's always going to be a question mark. And Buffalo came to play. So not having that last forward slotted in, if it needs to be in the fourth line center, have be in the fourth line center. But I think if I'm not mistaken, we have an extra player up right now as it is. Maybe we don't. I didn't quite check, but I would feel more comfortable knowing that we've got 4 set lines, as opposed to having a 7th defenseman, right? So with all that being said, right, let's get to my next point, which is I'm going to wrap in a couple of different things with this point, right? Which is the fact that, Hurricanes right now, they need goal scoring, right? This last week, when I went through and I looked, we averaged 3 goals against. We gave up 3 goals between the 4 games, and we only scored 2.5. So when you look at these games, you have to realize something. The Hurricanes still struggle to score, but look how much of the lineup is now locked in, right? Essentially, your top 6 is locked in long term, right? Aho, Svechnikov, Jarvis, all long term, right? I guess at this point in time, Svechnikov probably has maybe 4-ish years left on his contract, 3 maybe, right? Stankoven, you just locked up this summer. Ehlers, you just locked up this summer, and Blake, you just locked up this summer. So your top 6 is rounded out, right? Here's my question for you. Bradley Nadeau, who I think is going to be, he has the potential to be that first line center that we need him to be. Where you saw him in? Because mind you sent him down because he wasn't getting quote unquote playing time. But I'm thinking even if he was getting 10 minutes a night on the fourth line, that 10 minutes is massively important to his development. Because at some point in time, he's going to plateau at the AHL level. For anyone who has kids in hockey, I always encourage, right, to play up. Yeah, it's going to suck the first couple of weeks, even the first season. But by the time you reach that second season, that next following thing, you're so much more prepared for it. You understand the speed of the game. And I think that's sort of kind of where I would put with Nadeau, right? Is look, he's better off struggling now with Hall and Kokiniemi as his line mates, right? Then next season, if we don't know who's going to be on that line with him, you know what I mean? There's a chance that Kokiniemi is going to get moved, right? We don't know if some of these other guys, right? Because let's be honest here, Robinson, I'm just not a fan at this point in time. It's not necessarily the miss net from last week or from the game last night. I think it's more or less he's 30 years old, right? He's only the most points he ever put up was for us last season at 26. He's taking a roster spot for a kid who could come in here on the fourth line and might put up 25 goals, not 25 points, So Nadeau played 5 games with us, had a goal, right? But he looked good pretty much the whole entire time. Now, the defensive side still has to learn the puck, right? The speed, like I said, is different. But I don't necessarily see an issue with if we're bringing up these rookie defensemen because we don't have the manpower to fix that problem. Screw it. Have the first half of the season be how are we going to, we're having a lot of rookies that are coming in. A lot of rookies are going to be learning the ropes because if by the second half of the season, Nadeau is revving his engine, he's going, he's putting up a point a game, which is very much where I think he will end up at, right? We're more prepared than if he gets a phone call April 28th saying, hey, it's game 3, we need you to play, coming from the AHL to the NHL. That's not the caliber of player isn't the same. Does that make sense? Right? I'm not crazy on this. I think you're better off going into the situation saying, hey, he's going to make some mistakes. We might even lose some games because of Bradley Nadeau. But we know he can put the puck in the back of the net, which is what our team desperately needs. Your top 6, Svechnikov's the only shooter. The only true shooter. Right? And at that, he plays more of a power forward game. He's not necessarily a sniper. Right? Nadeau, from what we've seen, he's more of a sniper than he is anything else. He whips that puck. He whips that puck like it owes it money. You know what I mean? Like puck, you better pay the fuck up. You know what I mean? That's that level of like, you better, that's how much he whips that puck, which is what all of us have been begging for. The last person I saw shoot a puck like this was Jeff Skinner in his first couple of seasons with us. Like 2000, I think it's 2010-ish maybe, to maybe 2011. Skinner would whip this puck like and it would fly off his stick. And that's exactly what I see with Bradley Nadeau. So not having him learning the game when it's still a manageable season, we're first place right now in the Metro, right? Mind you, the other teams are right there with us. But I think you're better off 100% having Bradley Nadeau up learning the game than a Robinson who he's not going to contribute. I think we haven't signed for another 2 or 3 years. But what good is that going to do? What good is it going to do? He's not going to benefit the team long term. I don't need the fourth line to necessarily play the best shutdown defense in the world. What I need is a player in the lineup who can whip that puck and score. So that, hey, because our power play is so great. You know what I mean? Like, worst comes to worst, you come in and you put Bradley Nadeau, he gets 8 minutes and he's on the power play. He's developing still. He's still learning the game. He's still running the practices. Not having him with the team is going to be detrimental. Because the other half of it is this, and I think I know exactly what the Hurricanes are doing, and I'm not a fan of it, right? Which is next season they're going to have him in the lineup. Even if he comes and puts up 60, 70 points, right? They're going to try to cut out a deal from underneath him, saying, "Hey, look, once you only did one season. You know what? We shouldn't do this, but we're going to give you a $5.5 million contract for 8 years, as opposed to if he played this season, kicked ass, and then played next season, kicked ass. Now he really should be looking at an $8 to $9 million deal. I understand what they're trying to do, but I just don't agree with it, right? Because right now we already have the injury bug. It's already bit, right? You're better off seeing what he can do long term, right? Because what's going to happen if next season Aho gets hurt in the first week and he misses 6 months? What happens if we've already had Slavin go down, right? So that's the worst case scenario for defense. But what if Stalzy goes down? He's going to be 37 by the end of next season. What if he goes down? Right? We have it bad right now with the injuries we have. I'm saying we're already cruising. Throw him in the games. Why not? There's no use, absolutely no use. There's no harm in it because guess what? We're already not looking great when we're winning. So anyway, getting off that little tangent. But it's sort of kind of like, this next part sort of kind of goes hand in hand with it, right? So Svechnikov essentially saying, hey, look, like if you're not going to play me on the first line, then you feel free to move me. Feel free to trade me. Now, I don't take that as him requesting a trade out of Carolina, right? Because I think there's a different tone to that than what everything I've read has suggested, right? It's not saying, I'm not playing here, trade me. It's like, hey, look, man, like I don't want to request a trade, but if you're not going to put me on the top two lines, like maybe it's better if I move elsewhere. So there's two thoughts on this, and look, I'm gonna make sure we're on the same page. I am a huge Svechnikov fan, right? Huge Svechnikov fan. It probably wouldn't be the best thing for his career to move. If you love the player, you agree with me. It probably wouldn't necessarily be the worst idea if he moved, right? For his own career, for him to actually put up some goals, put up some points, right? Brind'Amour's system does not cater to the superstar. It caters to the what's the word I'm looking for here? Like the player who's the team first player, right? Which is what Aho is, which is what Stalzy is, which is what a lot of our team is. The issue with that is, right, and I'm 100% a team first player, is sometimes you need a guy who could put up 100 points to win a cup, right? You need a guy who could take over a game to win a cup. There's a reason why Nathan McKinnon has a cup. There's a reason why Crosby has as many as he does. Ovechkin has them. There are players, right? Look at recently. Even with you got Tampa Bay and Florida. Both of them have showstoppers, right? More so Tampa than Florida. Florida has a little bit more of it by committee, but it's a committee of like, if you rated players 1 through 10, it's a committee of like 8.5s. Where like, I think our top player in the Hurricanes is an 8, with it being an Aho. Does that make sense? Right? So like, your Kachucks, your Bennetts, your Marchands now, like all these players working together at an 8/5 time, they're remming. Any of them can score on any given night, right? But with the Hurricanes, it always seems like it's they're wanting that, but at like Dollar General cost, right? So like perfect example is like Fast, right? You've had Robinson, with the playoffs last year. You've got these players who they're Dollar General type style players where they're good, they work hard, they're great team players, but you need more than that to get over the hump. Like when all of a sudden, when it was that last game, right? We saw that it was gonna end up being Florida and not Toronto. I remember clear as day at a barbershop out in Hawaii, right? Sitting down, they had surprisingly enough they had the game on already, right, on ESPN. And the game was over, and I started grumbling, and the barber was like, "What's going on?" I was like, "Well, I just know that my team's gonna lose now." And he was like, "Why?" Well, he's like, "It's your team, man. You gotta have a little faith in them." I said, "No, because they don't match up well. They're not big," which we didn't address during the off season, right? They've got so many of these issues, right, that revolve around the Hurricanes. Like the way that they coach, the way that they play is based more on a team mentality than an individual mentality. There's no kind of gotten away from the main point of this, but trying to bring it back in is this, right? So you always need a guy on your team, especially when you get into the playoffs, who can take it over. We could go up and down that lineup of any team right now, right? And I'd say that guy could take it over. That guy could take it over. Now, some of you guys are going to say Sebastian Aho. I agree and disagree all at the same time, right? Does he have the capability? Sure. But as we've seen in previous years, he doesn't always live up to that potential. And that's the kicker. That's my frustration with Aho, right? Is he has the ability to, but at barely 6 feet tall, right? When you go up against some of these other players who are 6'3", 6'4", who want it more than anything else, they're going to ground and pound. They are going to literally run you off the tracks. And that's how we lost to Florida twice, right? These last couple of years. It's how we lost we've lost to Boston. The first year we got back into the playoffs. It's the same thing, and it's frustrating not seeing the team want to address it. Okay, cool. We got Keanu Miller on the back end. Okay, well that's great, but when I need a net front presence and our options are Blake, Stankoven, or Jarvis, love all three of them. All three great players. But who like we've seen it already a couple of times. Jarvis get rattled in the front. So now we're going to ask one of our smaller guys who has the heart to do it. Love him to death. But the expectation now is that, look, we want you to go up against guys who are 6'4", 6'5" on the D side of things. You're not going to win those. And if you do get those things, they're taking such a pounding, they're going to get hurt. You have to address the size issue, right? So how this all comes back to Svechnikov is like this, right? You have to address that side of things. You have to figure out, okay, well, we're paying Svech 7.5, we're paying Ehlers 8, we're paying Aho 9. The top 6 need top 6 minutes. I'm not necessarily saying that you don't, the fourth line gets cut, or that you're definitely not cutting the third line, right? But I'm saying you have to get more out of your Svechnikovs, your Ahos, and your Jarvises, right? So right now, when I looked, I think Aho is on pace for, I want to say, it's really close to like maybe 88, 87 points, which is a decent season for him, right? Last year, he had 74. I think you have to acknowledge the fact at some point in time that Aho is just a good center. But what the Hurricanes need to be successful is a great one. I'm not saying you trade him. I'm not saying you move him. I'm saying the Hurricanes' top priority isn't finding a 2C. It's finding a 1C. Because you find a 1C who can score more, who's just a little bit more bigger, has a little bit more grit to him. You put him in that 1C spot with Jarvis and Svechnikov, right? That first line has a whole new identity. Right? And that's what I firmly believe is what this team needs, right? You then look at that second line, you say, okay, well, now I've got Aho, right? Aho and Blake, I think, worked really, really well together. They looked amazing together, right? Now you're going to have Ehlers over there. Because now that second line, they're not taking on the best Aho isn't taking on the best defenseman every single game. He's taking on the second best, right? I think that there has to be a fundamental shift. Something's got to change, to be honest with you. What I'm seeing from the Hurricanes is this. At the end of the day, to wrap up this part of the conversation, is this, right? I'm seeing the same stuff that I've seen the last 4 or 5 seasons, right? Ups and downs, a little bit more bigger gaps in defense, but I think those will eventually work themselves out, right? Having a little bit younger of a core, right? But offense there has to be offensive adjustments, right? Now, I've not forgotten about the most pain in the ass thing that has come with the Hurricanes. It's been for a couple of seasons now, but this last season, it's been rough. This power plays. What is this, man? Like, what is this? No. I'll wait. You explain it to me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. I don't. No, fuck that. Jeff Daniels, we love you. Whatever power play plan you have, go ahead and toss that bad boy. Open up ChatGPT and ask it how to run a power play. Because with the amount of skill we have in our top 6, having the worst power play in the NHL just isn't acceptable. And what I think it is more so than anything else, it's not personnel issue. It's compete. It is a compete issue. I promise you, if you watch it this way, you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about, right? How many times are we seeing that first face-off getting lost? It gets cleared. Okay, whatever. It's fine. It's like 10, 15 seconds off the clock. Now, between Aho, Jarvis, even Svechnikov and Ehlers, like we have the skill now to get into the zone. Previous years, it's been a dump and chase type of routine. We do have it sorted out to the point where we can get zone entry, right? Watch the movement. Watch how little they are moving their feet. Watch when that puck goes into a 50-50 board battle. It's like they say, we've turned it over, and there it goes. I swear to God, put that third line, put Stalzy, Martinook, and Carrier, put them on the damn power play. Because it's a compete issue. It's not a skill issue. It's not even an X's and O's. For the most part, I don't think it's not even Jeff Daniels' fault. I think what it is, though, is you have to sit that first line down and say, okay, this is what we're going to do. Power play against penalty kill in the practice, right? Whoever doesn't score, if penalty kill ices the puck, okay, power play, you have to do 5 push-ups. Power play scores, okay, penalty kill. Now you have to do 10 push-ups. Whatever it needs to be to increase the compete. Compete isn't there. They don't care. That puck goes to a 50-50 board battle. More than half of the time that it ends up the other way. So, but let's ask ourselves that, right? If that's happening, if we know this is happening, right? And we say, hey, it's Jarvis who's going in there, and he's going up against a 6'4" defenseman. Love Jarvis. All of us, we've established this, right? Love the guy. If he's doing that, he's going up against such a big guy, and that big guy has, mind you, bigger guys, bigger arm span, bigger reach, right? If he has a bigger reach and that's why he's clearing the puck, put a bigger guy out there with him. I don't think it's a half bad idea to have Jordan Staal out there on the power play. Not because he's some goal-scoring machine, but because you know what Jordan Staal does better than probably anyone else? He can hold on to that puck. He can make sure that like smart plays are being made. If you put Jordan Staal out there, you put Aho on one side of him, say Ehlers on the other, Svechnikov at the point with Gothenburg, I'm telling you right now, you're going to win possession of the puck, right, at the face-off. You have a built-in net front presence. And essentially what you do is, from I'd say like in between the face-off circles, if you draw a triangle that goes towards the opposing team net and back down like this, right, that is his territory. That is his spot. He's not just a net front guy. And this is where I think there's a little bit of confusion sometimes, especially with like newer fans, right? The bigger guys who have that net front presence, their responsibility is also behind the net as well. So a shot is rung around the post. It's his job to take those 2 strides to get behind it, to pick it up, to have his head on the swivel. Look, where's it going, right? That is what a big man on the power play can do. so that it's not necessarily a knock on any of these smaller guys, but it's what, like, it's your Wilson to your Ovi. Wilson, it's why Wilson's on the top power play unit. I don't know if he is now currently at his age, but growing up for the last 15 years, watching that's what you've seen. You've seen Wilson on the power play. Wilson isn't necessarily this big goal scoring guy. Can he put up 20, 30 goals? Sure. But he's that big body presence that can also get to the front of the net, cause havoc in front. Because Jackson Blake isn't necessarily taking the eyes away from any goaltender that gets in front of him. You know what I mean? Like, there are some of these aspects that I think need to be considered as well. Well, with all that being said, I think I've rambled on enough about the Hurricanes at this point. Like, follow, subscribe. I am going to start doing lives again. I'm still kind of taking a little bit of a break from them. I'm in the process of moving back to Hawaii, so there's that. I will try to continue making these videos at least once a week, talking mostly about the Hurricanes. Don't be surprised if you see one on here about the Mammoth, or if I see a big story breaking in with the Hurricanes or with any other team. I might give my 2 cents on it. But when it comes to, like I said, even with Svechnikov and you know what's going on with that, I'm not even putting that much thought into it. But yeah, so I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.